Thank you very much, Wedge. Hello, everybody. As Wedge said, I'm Suzie Robinson. I'm a consultant at ClearBox Consulting, and I've been here for about 2 years now. Prior to that, I was an in-house practitioner with a variety of different companies, each of which had frontline workers. So I understand the need to reach them for those of you out there who need to do the same. I have worked for ClearBox for 2 years now, and I help businesses with their digital workplace strategies. And I also look after our suite of reports, the first of which, or the last of which, was released just a couple of weeks ago. So as part of the research for our new Intranet and Employee Experience Platforms report, I saw a variety of trends that indicate the direction of all products we'll be moving in over the next few years, many of which fill the needs of Intranet managers, communication professionals, and beyond. I'm going to focus on 4 key areas where I'll share screenshots, but also share business scenarios that give a little context around why features are so helpful. So I'm going to show you how these products can help with managing communication campaigns, how you can build a sense of community and improve connectivity with these products, what good usability standards look like, and what integrations and business tools are on offer. There will be time for questions at the end, so please post in the chat as I go and I'll come back to them at the end. Remember that while I may highlight a few products in each of these topics, the best product is the one that's right for you and your business's needs. You'll need a strategy for that, which is a topic in its own right, but have a look on our website for some resources to help with strategy writing, research, and product selection. So time to move on to the first area. So many of you will be internal communicators, and so the features on offer to help you do your jobs more effectively are highly important. I'm going to mention a few business scenarios and share some screenshots to explain what makes these features so good. So I'm going to begin with your starting point, content creation, where many of the products we saw handled the publishing experience nicely. Whether you're in a centralized news team or a decentralized publishing community, it's vital your tools support what you're trying to achieve. Unilever's example I'll draw on here, which handles the experience well. So let's think about Mersio, one publisher in a community of a few dozen who publishes news stories for the sales department. He publishes news about once every few weeks and has a decent amount of design skill, although he is a fan of multiple font colors and underlining, and we all know people like that. A form or template approach to building the article keep him within company guidelines, while also speeding up a process that's not part of his regular tasks. He also wants a way to get to editing that's not overly complex and be presented with sensible screens that don't overwhelm him with choices about where the article should be stored. Finally, all of Mersio's content is signed off by his boss, Kavita, before it goes live. Both Mersio and Kavita need a simple workflow and approval process to make the feedback and subsequent sign-off process quick and easy. All of these things are something that Unilever can deliver. So then there's the actual creation part of the publishing experience, which needs to be simple and support publishers to create attractive pages with engaging content that meet company guidelines. For Mersio, who, remember, loves capitalized yellow font, has a process that will support him with creating consistent pages is really key for him. A drag and drop approach, such as the one in Interact shown here, could be a good approach. This would also allow him to drop in polls, surveys, and multimedia content, gradually building the interactivity of a page. As Mersio only posts every few weeks, he may forget some of the more nuanced training around content creation. The language suggestions feature in Interact will prompt action if Mersio writes policeman instead of police officer, for example. Sometimes an article isn't enough. For example, whenever sales win a big client, they want to notify the business so everyone can join in the celebration. This is something Mersio can do using notifications and alerts, drawing attention to big stories, or for other departments, this would be useful for something like product recalls, for example. And creating beautiful pages is all well and good, but Mersio needs to make sure the right people see it and at the right time. This is difficult to achieve, but is one of the most asked for capabilities that we receive from clients. Many products now include dynamic audience targeting tools, which means you don't just have to use audience groups defined by Active Directory and potentially by IT. You can choose to create new audiences on the fly. First Up does this well via its orchestration engine, which includes an audience builder that updates the number of people being targeted as the logic is applied. Beyond this, the orchestration engine uses behavioral data to completely automate the timing of the content. Users receive the post at the best time for them and for the priority level of the post they are seeing. They are then reminded to read the post, increasing the chance of reaching them. Most platforms include a variety of channels to reach users too. Desktop, email, mobile, newsletters, and digital signage are the most common. This amount of sophistication allows Mersio to target smaller groups, such as its sales colleagues, or specific groups, such as people across the whole of America via mobile only. Often the tools that deliver a strong article building process also offer good analytics to go on alongside, although this isn't always the case. Other products offer even better analytics, such as First Up and also Staffbase that's presented here. The best products give you information about the performance of your platform overall, but also individual pieces of content, including non-news content such as ideation spaces or community posts. The information presented should be actionable. By that I mean you should either be able to do something with it immediately or dig down into more detail and answer the burning questions you have. Being able to set targets within the analytics is really helpful too, something Staffbase and a few others will do. ROI is a tricky topic for intranet managers and for communicators. Tools like Staffbase will give you data to prove where they or their content brings value. Ultimately, while Mersio may not be interested in the results related to the whole platform, being able to give him useful data about his content and overall communications campaign will engage him in the publishing process and encourage him to make improvements to content. Kavita, his boss, too, would welcome information relating to her department and how their news pieces are performing. So being able to gather individual articles under the campaign heading of Sales Push 2022 and seeing collated results and analytics would be really valuable for Mersio and Kavita, and I'm sure plenty of you as well. Now, I've only scratched the surface of news functionality, but there are some fun capabilities that I wanted to mention as well. When different users create articles on the internet, it can be difficult for them to see what else is coming soon. Internal comms can struggle to manage the huge flow of news stories as well. Editorial calendars give people like Mersio a way to see what else is due to be published that may distract the people he's trying to reach. You can see an example of that on the left there. Sometimes even the simplest forms end up creating big articles that feel like overkill for a small story. A quick posting option, such as in a news feed, that still allows attachments, plays GIFs in the feed, and offers ghostwriting, will give Mersio even more flexible options to reach his audience in the most appropriate way for them and the story. And of course, post as Kavita if she doesn't have time to do it herself. Lastly, finding the right image for a page and using it in the best way can sometimes be the most difficult part of the publishing process. I know I've spent quite a long time trying to find the right images for PowerPoints just today. Giving Mersio access to the company gallery, Pexels and other stock photo sites means the images will be of professional standard for one thing. And then inbuilt editing tools means that he doesn't have to have something like Photoshop just to crop the images to fit the nooks and crannies of the internet for the different spaces that it has. So as I say, I've only mentioned a few vendors, but there are plenty that deliver a good experience for communicators. I've highlighted the ones that really stood out to us here, but overall internal communicators will be really satisfied with the tools that are on offer across the industry and can look forward to some interesting developments in the products that you may already have. We urge you to explore what's on offer and find out what features really matter to you before you commit to the shiniest product on the market though. So really do your research and decide what is important to you. Not all of these things like audience orchestration will be relevant to you, but they offer some really nice functionality that will help take some of the administrative burden away. So digital community spaces are more important than ever, with 2 years of remote working for almost all desk-based workers bringing the gaps into sharp relief. Then there's the front line, who have been long ignored by the market, but mobile intranet experiences have dramatically improved over the past few years as well. We found that collaboration now frequently takes place away from an intranet, but that doesn't mean that project spaces, social areas, communities of practice or similar aren't still needed. For example, Joe is an intranet manager and they've been asked to create a space for Project X. This space is for project managers to share their finalised documents with each other and also project group members to see where they're working collaboratively in teams to see the final documents published somewhere. But it also allows the rest of the company to see news and status updates about the project. They've also been approached by Mike in the HR department. He would like more interactive and conversational space for HR, as opposed to a more traditional intranet area. He'd like a feed of questions, conversations, and other activities with the HR team, alongside help desk tickets, blog posts from him, and links to core systems. Beezy and Axera's Communifier are 2 examples here of flexible spaces that could help Joe. As part of Project X, Joe has been asked to introduce a method for gathering ideas from across the business. Through a tool like Beezy, the process can be bright and social, using features to get people talking, as well as practical through detailed progress tracking. Mike has asked Joe how they can encourage people to use the HR site and intranet further, and how it could support some minor L&D activities. Using Communifier, Joe can introduce gamification with configurable targets and badges, then share leaderboards to encourage gentle competition. Joe also wants to start several communities to help capture expertise from across the business and expand on people's knowledge. Koyo includes a nice wiki feature that people across the community could contribute to, capturing expertise from those who truly know how something works. To encourage conversation and bring experts together, Joe and their publishers can create and manage events, as well as encouraging formal conversation through community activity feeds. Having a set of flexible applications to build these spaces really is beneficial, as it means they can be tailored for specific needs, such as dedicated onboarding space for new employees, gradually introducing them to Joe's business. So having these sorts of spaces allows you to really think about how you want to separate out Microsoft Teams activities and this sort of community space. There are lots of social and community features that I've not touched on, but I wanted to mention a couple more before I move on. Yammer is, of course, a big social elephant in the room, and many vendors integrate nicely with it, as well as offering their own alternatives. Where SharePoint is in use, the integration is understandably particularly good, and Yammer can fulfill at least some of Joe's discussion, Q&A, praise, and polls needs. Where Joe has chosen a different social approach that isn't Yammer, they want to be able to moderate comments and posts. As Joe has a large team, they want to see and share the status of any comments that are being addressed, which is something Interact supports. Finally, seeing users like an article about an office restructure has never sat right with Joe, or with me, or probably plenty of you as well. In line with many social media sites, some vendors such as Unily offer configurable reaction icons and meanings to expand how users may react to content, so it's more appropriate for the subject that's being shared. So another important part of building a community is being able to reach everyone. I've been pleased to see vendors addressing the needs of frontline workers now for more than ever, and there are some really strong experiences out there now. Joe's company has a large frontline workforce, and they want a mobile experience that's more than just an intranet in their pocket, while still meeting the needs of desk-based colleagues as well. They know not all frontline workers will be on a central database, so offering QR codes to gain access is very helpful. Additionally, the mobile experience doesn't necessarily need to be as large or in-depth as the desktop experience, so a change in the homepage to simpler widgets or an activity feed alone, like Happio here, is more in keeping with social media experiences. An experience that works well on small screen is important too, of course. There are a lot of approaches for Joe and you to consider when it comes to reaching people via mobile. Some products have their origins in mobile-first technology, such as Staffbase and Reach from LiveTiles. These have simplified menus, responsive and reactive content, and understand how to make the most of mobile screens. Others understand the needs of deskless workers, and so they present content in an effective way, such as Communifier. These tools break content down into steps to guide users through screens and through the content in a social media-esque way. The best products also offer dedicated features for frontline workers. For example, Joe is concerned about WhatsApp being used as a shadow tech, so a good alternative could be the chat feature in Koyo. As with everything, you need to consider what's right for your organisation. If you have a lot of frontline workers, then something simpler, or even a dedicated employee app product, which is something else entirely and not covered in this report, might be the best option. If you have a lot of desk workers, ask yourself, what is it they really want to do on mobile? How can the app version of your intranet support these needs? I've mentioned a handful of intranet products that can help create a sense of community and aid with connecting people across the business. Many of the products we've reviewed include strong features that will complement other tools across the digital workplace, so it's worth spending time to work out what you need and which are the most appropriate for you. While many intranets and platforms deliver a good user experience, some really do stand out as delivering a superb experience for users. I'd go so far as to say all products we've included in our report deliver a strong experience, but I've picked out just a few examples for you. So for any vendors out there, don't feel offended, I'm not picking you. It was a really hard decision. When we reviewed the user experience across the products in our report, there were 4 areas we explored as part of our scenario, as we wanted to see how vendors had made their products easy to use. Navigation was one of the areas and is tricky to get right, so I'll come back to that in a moment. We explored the overall quality of the UX for users, with interface items working as expected and consistently. Margaret, a restaurant manager, would find it irritating if a pop-up appeared unexpectedly, for example. Margaret also wants to keep on top of her to-do lists, so clear notifications that she can dismiss but also return to are helpful. Wing is Margaret's intranet manager, who fixes and develops things behind the scenes without Margaret realising who he is, and we all know how that feels. Wing has been asked by the branding manager to give every restaurant its own distinct brand. So the Oxford Street in London looks and feels different to Princess Street in Edinburgh. Using Omnia, this is something he's able to do easily. A good user experience shouldn't just apply to end users, but to admins as well, such as Wing and many of you. Powell Intranet is a good example of this in action, with its dedicated Powell Manager tool, with simply laid out options to browse through without needing technical knowledge. For Wing, he has a decentralized publishing model, so he needs a good overview of what's going on, but the admin experience needs to work well for his publishers as well, particularly the ones that infrequently update their content or publish news. This means governance and lifecycle tools are important to Wing, which Powell does well by expanding on the standard SharePoint offering. Finally, for an internal business like Wing's, an international business like Wing's, multi-language features are also important. I'm going to return to a couple of points I've mentioned before that are important capabilities for Wing. So the first is multi-language that I just mentioned, where Wing has dedicated translators who will translate key content for colleagues. The original and the translation need to remain connected with tracked changes and a simple interface to help with the management of content. While many tools offer auto-translation or some multi-language features, there are big differences in the sophistication that's on offer between them. And Omnia offers some very good tools, which is shown on the left there. The second is governance and lifecycle tools. These have improved over the years, but many intranets still lack simple and in-depth options that really meet Wing's needs. He needs to see what he's published, what others have published, the status of it all, and then take appropriate actions. Built-in notifications or other messages to help publishers manage their content are a great help, yet haven't appeared in many of the products that we've seen. Udemy is an exception to that and has very good tools around content lifecycle. So navigation, I'm going to return to that now. Navigation is a key factor in the usability of an intranet. What goes in the navigation menus is often up to administrators, but the way the site encourages people on their journey or directs them to relevant information is very much part of the product. Thought Farmer is an example of an intelligent navigation, which automatically adds navigation options based on the content page that's being built, which would remove the burden from Wing as he builds the site. For Margaret, she can then see the trail she's taken to reach a given point, so can easily backtrack if she's gone a slightly inaccurate route. Fallow is another example of flexible navigation choices, where in the screenshot you can see the content of a mega menu with an image dropped inside. This not only allows Wing to promote certain content or highlight an activity, but makes navigating around the site more visual and appealing for Margaret too. Excuse the phrase, but navigation will only get users so far. As a user, I'm a browser. I tend to look around to find what I want, but even I turn to searches when I can't navigate to what I'm looking for. Some products handle search very well, but it's still an area that needs addressing in others. SharePoint Online offers a good experience to use as an example here. Powered by Microsoft Search, the biggest benefit is the ability to search across the whole Microsoft ecosystem from one place, allowing Margaret to find a policy in the HR site, as well as finding a document in her OneDrive. The search will also federate content from integrated systems with a bit of setting up, so Margaret could also find ServiceNow tickets in her search results. The interface is pleasant and helpful, such as with suggested results as Margaret types. Wing would have to handle search management separately, but allows him to set promoted results to boost a UK pension for Margaret, for example. Wing could also define answers to popular search terms, such as showing Margaret how much holiday she's entitled to, rather than directing her to a policy page to work it out herself. People finding is another important aspect of the search experience, and many approaches deliver simple profiles, potentially with a nice organisation chart if you're lucky. The reality is that users like Margaret may not be great at updating their profile, either because of a lack of skill or inclination, or they may not know who to speak to get information updated. Getting the behind-the-scenes data for the people directory can end up as a bigger project by itself, one that few people truly want to take responsibility for. LiveTile stands out from the crowd with the experience it delivers here, which we feature in the wildcard scenario of their review. Yes, the profile page is attractive and there is a good org chart, but what makes it so good is that it will automatically prompt users to update their profile data. A configurable bot in the background will trigger messages via selected channels with different formality levels and levels of tenacity to choose between, something that we really like. There's even an automatic photo checker that will reject any profile photo that doesn't meet the requirements set. So if Margaret submitted a photo of herself and her husband, it could be rejected because too many people are in the image. This approach takes a lot of the burden away from intranet administrators, giving you time to focus on other things. It also means the people search is far more effective and a powerful resource, encouraging Margaret to keep it updated as she often relies on it herself to find experts across the business. Most intranets are the home for long, complex, and often important documents or information, particularly processes and procedures. When looking up information about planned and unplanned absence, Margaret is unlikely to read through reams of paper to find what she needs. If it doesn't come quickly, she's likely to lose faith and ask her manager or HR department questions that she could find out the answer to herself. Some products introduce tools to help people explore in-depth information repositories. Manuals is the name of the feature on Invotra, which allows large bodies of content from multiple locations to be structured like a manual or a book that can be navigated from the top level down to chapters, sections, and individual content items. There is also a useful A to Z widget as an alternative way to surface content from the manual, and an FAQ can be added for those things that crop up a lot. So when Margaret wants to know how many days holiday she's entitled to, she can quickly find an answer without having to sift through long documents explaining the company's dedication to mental health or how the amount of leave has changed over the years in the introduction. There are some great features in the market that help users with findability, navigation, and generally provide a great experience. I wanted to share a few other interesting things I've spotted during the research. First, as a restaurant manager, Margaret may change suppliers for frequent items such as milk and bread so that she can buy them at the lowest price the company has managed to negotiate. Having a thorough supplier directory that admins can easily edit, but also includes a feature for restaurants to provide feedbacks and rate aspects of the supplier service is highly valuable. I wanted to mention again how important the search interface is. If Margaret doesn't feel inspired to browse results and click on filters or tabs, then she may glance at the top results, give up, and complain that it doesn't work like Google. Including thumbnails and clear labels or filters are simple aspects that form a good search, and there's some things that we don't see all of the time. Finally, search analytics would be hugely beneficial to Wing. Being able to see how long people browse results before giving up, which terms didn't return results, and what the most common looked-for content is will help managers with the findability across the site much more effectively. This is still an area that's lacking, but some products do it well. Ultimately, the examples I've shared with you here have been designed to improve users' day-to-day lives on the internet by simplifying the ways to do things. Both end users and admins expect a clean, contemporary, and easy-to-use site that behaves as they expect. Some vendors do this really well, and they all approach these areas in different ways. So think about what would work best for your business and what's most important to your business users before you explore their capabilities. Intranets form part of a broader digital workplace that's made up of a variety of tools. The best offer admins the option to connect and integrate external business systems into the intranet in a seamless way, so that users don't know what it is they're really using. To expand on that point a little, the most likely way to achieve the impression that everything is happening in the intranet is by offering deep two-way integrations. This is where information is surfaced from the third-party system, but also where the user can interact with it. Lumaps offers some of these sorts of services out of the box, though often the submission and subsequent return action take place in different widgets or web parts. The user experience of interacting with these integrations is consistent with the rest of the internet though, making it a seamless experience for users, and that's the really important bit. The simplest form of integration is linking out to other tools using single sign-on, which is still a valid approach and is common across the platforms we've seen. Let's take Leo, for example, an account manager who wants to let IT know that his company phone is broken. He doesn't need to know that this is handled in ServiceNow. Clicking a button to raise an IT ticket that sends the request into ServiceNow is much simpler for him. Returning to the same page to see any updates and final resolution is quick and convenient, meaning he doesn't have to worry about emails necessarily or need to know the name of the tool for the search. As an account manager, Leo shares files with clients using Dropbox, so integrating document libraries is very useful for him to see documents in a broader context where needed, and those outside of SharePoint, of course, are important as well. Sometimes business systems are integrated through forms. When Leo submits a time-off request, for example, the initial request is passed to his line manager before the intranet passes onto an integrated HR system. For Anya, the intranet manager, having a flexible and highly configurable approach is appealing. as it gives her all sorts of options to build these sorts of services. These sorts of services may even be an alternative to a dedicated tool for smaller businesses, for example. Elcom has a good form building tool with equally detailed form workflow steps. And you could not only build a service workflow, but also set up approval steps for intranet content based on individual department requirements as well. So it's quite a flexible tool. The company Leo and Anya work for has made a significant investment in the Microsoft ecosystem, like many of your organizations. And so the company strategy says that much of the digital workplace must work well with Microsoft tools. Generally speaking, those intranets that rely on SharePoint tend to integrate better with the Microsoft suite, but there are still some that do it better than others, such as Involve. However, many of the vendors understand the need to work well with Microsoft applications, such as Collabo, and so offer comparable capabilities. So let's have a look at this a little bit more closely. Integrations with the Microsoft ecosystem can be lighter weight, such as the collation of a list of team spaces or the presentation of a SharePoint library. This means Leo can see the teams, thanks Microsoft, that he could join and identify any that he feels he could be part of. The integrations can also be more in-depth in two-way, such as full conversations in Yammer or utilizing Viva features. The example on the left, Involve makes good use of SharePoint lists. The product applies its own framework to lists and displays them in different formats for end users. In the example here, the list is being used for events, but lists can also be used for alerts and translations and many other things. Where Anya is making use of lists already, which are a good tool in their own right, Involve offers a nice display layer that removes some of the admin burden to configure and design the output. In the Collabo example, you can see a Microsoft Teams chat taking place in a work group, which is their version of a project space. Where Leo has a client project space on the intranet, this means he doesn't have to navigate between tools to read the latest messages in the quieter Teams channel. As with other aspects of intranet platforms, there are a huge number of capabilities available that will be more or less appropriate for you and your business. I've pulled out a couple of nice examples here, but explore what's right for your business as you conduct your research. So let's say that Anya's company uses Google Workspace rather than Microsoft. There are platform options that integrate with Google as well as they do SharePoint. Collabo is an example here, but Lumaps and Happier are a couple of others. Anya has uploaded a document and she can't remember where it's saved, but it does easily appear in search results. Rather than navigating all the way to the origin, she can use Koyo to update the document from the search results page, which saves her time and is less fiddly. For Leo, it's important he can access integrated systems on his mobile as he travels a lot. A chatbot approach with preloaded activities and standardized responses not only simplifies things for Leo, but for Anya and other admins as well, which means he can report that his phone is broken from his phone, but from another system as well if he needs to, or log a different ticket. Finally, Leo uses a variety of business tools and has a lot of activities and notifications stacking up from across the digital workplace. Beezy's unusual homepage works well for him, as it gathers a number of activities together so he can easily keep on top of what he needs to do. As I've already said, there are a variety of approaches to business systems and Microsoft 365 integrations across the different products in the market, even though I've only touched on a few. As with all other aspects of the internet, decide what's right for you and your business and explore your chosen approach with the vendors. If you'd like to hear more about the topics I've mentioned here or see even more screenshots, please visit our website and download our Intranet and Employee Experience Platforms report for free. We've reviewed 31 of the best products on the market, 19 of which were assessed against our business scenarios, so you can see what really matters to you and find the best solution for your organisation. That's the end. Are there any questions at all?
Thank you very much, Susie. We've got a couple of questions. While other people are typing into the chat or the Q&A panel, I will ask, you mentioned employee app as if that was a special thing. If an intranet provides a mobile experience, is that the same thing as an employee app?
I think now some of them can be. If you'd asked me a couple of years ago, I would have said no. I think that there has been a lot of development in the world of intranets now, and vendors have understood the need for a lighter weight approach. For the people who need an employee app type solution. So your frontline workers, they are time poor, they may not work during normal office hours, they may not work 9 to 5, they may also be on contracts, they may not be around for very long. They don't need something as large and as complex as a full intranet system. They just don't need that level of complexity in their day-to-day. So employee apps are a much lighter weight solution. And there are dedicated products out there for those, which we have a separate report about. But intranet solutions now are simplifying their approaches. So some of them actually have removed chunks of functionality, or actually introduced dedicated tools where they know that the frontline will actually benefit them, like chat, for example. So there's a real mixture of things out there. For anyone with a frontline workforce, I would say it's worthwhile still investigating both markets, because they both offer things that the other doesn't, and the right solution will be out there for you, which could be an intranet, or it could very well be an employee app product.
Alrighty, thank you there. I can tell you lots of our guests have been downloading the report throughout your webinar. If you just go to clearbox.co.uk, you can get this 670-page report as a PDF immediately for free. Incredible. Lisa, who is a friend of the show, she's interested in examples of knowledge bases and how they're handled in search. I don't know if Lisa would like to expand on that question, or if Suzie, if you think intranets are capable of full knowledge management.
I think there are some out there that do it better than others. So Omnia springs to mind, that has communities of practice and communities of knowledge. So has a dedicated tool that revolves around people asking questions and official answers kind of being granted to that, so to help people actually kind of self-serve and self-learn. So there's kind of that approach, but then there are others that will integrate very well with full knowledge-based systems, so those deep two-way integrations that I was talking about that will allow for that side of things. I think search is one of those areas that's quite often configurable. And when we were speaking with vendors, it was an area that many of them said could be configured beyond what we were shown and what we've covered, because there are so many different needs across different businesses such as this, so they can expand out. So it's worthwhile always speaking to vendors, using our report if there are any gaps in there, if there's anything you're interested about, speak to vendors and see what they can say, and in particular ask them for case studies and examples where they've done it before, because of course you don't want to be told yes we can do that without seeing any proof of it. Actually having that proof is valuable.
Good advice, of course. Go to the vendors and challenge them. Lisa clarifies a little bit by saying she's specifically looking for how to handle document control versus the knowledge base, and how do I FAQs. The content owners don't always understand the difference between knowledge, how do I, and FAQs, and big documents.
Yeah, so that's quite a big topic in its own right. There are different approaches being taken. And so I think it depends on what works best for your users as to which approach to take for some of that stuff. And so I mean, FAQs, I always used to get slightly irritated when you'd publish something for the first time and it already had FAQs with it, because in my eyes, it hadn't been published long enough to have any questions. So how could they be frequently asked? It's just kind of sloppy approach to trying to communicate something in a way. But there are tools out there that will help actually formulate formulate proper FAQs properly, and will present them on screen. And there are accordion approaches that you can expand out information either within an FAQ or to try and help communicate those larger documents. So that approach is splitting things out and publishing on screen to help with findability. But that being said, we found now that search will index documents much more than they used to. So even PDFs, we found now that it's not just titles that are indexed, it's actually the content of them too. So even if documents are just being replaced by having PDFs updated, and the version control happening through governance and the guidances around that, then that's something that's actually being supported now by the technology rather than just being relied on with people doing it locally. I hope that answers some of the question at least.
It's a whole content topic, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
bloggers, writers, it's everything.
Mm.
Suzanne is asking about the adoption speed for very large enterprise organizations. Do you have any tips for getting movement and momentum within organizations that take a long time to adopt new tech and new platforms?
I think with something like an intranet, it's easier in a way because you hope that they're already using the previous platform. So if you're just simply upgrading, then having this shift across and nothing really changing in the background is an easy kind of first step. But where you're introducing something new, or where maybe you don't have intranets being the automatic homepage for browsers when they're open, for example, that's a good one to introduce if you can. But things around finding out what it is your users really want. As you're doing that research to pick the technology, you should return to that research and find out where their pain points are, find out what it is your intranet is trying to solve, and then communicate around those areas. So really target those things. So using people finding as an example, if the business finds it very difficult to find experts that are outside their little bubble, then encouraging people to update their profile information and communicating this new kind of expert finder, this new people finding tool, and how it's going to help them is a good way to kind of target your launch communications and to encourage that adoption, and really finding those pain points and across the bigger departments or the more vocal departments as well. So those ones that are influencers in your business, maybe because they talk to a lot of people, or because a lot of the people across the business speak to them, trying to find those things that will help solve their problems and directing them to those tools on the intranet. And of course, I found that people will still maybe not bother to use search, don't realise that the search has improved as you introduce a new platform, will still ask questions over email or maybe Microsoft Teams chat, that sort of thing. Giving people links back is always a very quick and easy way to kind of redirect people into the intranet and to make them realise that this tool exists with a lot of great content. That takes a while to do, as most adoption does when you're trying to encourage people maybe a little bit slower, but actually showing them that, hey, this content exists. If you need anything else, and look in the search, I found has been quite good in the past.
Just quickly to build on that, how would you encourage stakeholders to decide to replace the intranet, to allow an intranet project to come about?
It's a tricky one, because something you don't really want to do is show that your ROI is really bad right now, but showing that the solution that you have isn't reaching as many people as you would want it to is part of that solution, whilst at the same time saying that there's a real need for something that an intranet delivers. So if that could be people finding, for example, if it could be internal communication, reaching people, if it's a practical tool, if it's trying to encourage people to use the benefit system, trying to find those other areas of the business that may be being underserved that an intranet can help highlight, but your current solution doesn't do, is a starting point. But just generally taking that temperature of your users and finding out what does or doesn't work for them, and whether the solution you have can meet those needs, is really the first starting point. If you're working on your strategy for your intranet just generally, and you realise that you have a whole load of needs that you just cannot do through your technology, then that's a point where I would say maybe it's time to start looking. As well as any big changes in the business. So if you acquire a new company, or if you acquired yourself, if there is new locations being opening, if the business is expanding, then looking ahead for those few years as well, and actually seeing, working out whether the intranet will meet the future needs, not just now and not just in the next year or so, but actually in 5 years' time. Is it going to scale with you? And if it won't, if you can see that it's going to start stretching or cracking, then it's the time to start thinking about, maybe you don't replace it right now, but maybe now's the time you do that research, and in a year, maybe 2's time, that's when you do that analysis to see, are we doing the right thing with the current platform, or actually now is it time to go shopping and look for something else.
Samantha is thinking about integrations, as you spoke about integrations earlier. Were there any particularly impressive integrations that you saw during the writing and reviewing of our report?
There are loads, and I'm not going to remember all of them. So again, any vendors that are in the audience, I apologise if I don't remember you. I think that the first up example that I showed very briefly, which has like a chatbot interface, is quite interesting. So the fact that it has that two-way integration with a system, but it simplifies the interface, so the user doesn't really have to think about what it is, where it is they have to go to, or what it is really they're trying to do. They just know that they want to report their phone's broken, or they want to say that their printer doesn't work in the office. And having those really simple step-through processes is really nice. Beezy has some good integrations as well with the card approach on the homepage. So that will pop up through their homepage, which is just a series of those cards, as I say. And each one updates as the user's read through it and has acknowledged it. But then things like requests for additional discount from Salesforce will pull through onto that homepage and really kind of stick out for a user to be able to interact with and then pass it back into Salesforce. But then also there's some interesting integrations with other systems for communications. So actually pushing out messages from the intranet out into business systems. Again, that's something that Social Chorus, which was first up originally, did, and is something they're planning to do in future. And there are a few others out there that will do that as well. So that concept of the broader digital workplace. So it's not just thinking about your intranet and possibly just your intranet being the front door out elsewhere, but actually allowing people who spend all day in Salesforce to get those messages through. That's something that we're starting to see more of now, and it's something that I know that a lot of vendors will develop. So a lot of them have open APIs, have a lot of configuration options, either for you to do in-house yourself or IT to do, or they'll do it themselves or with a partner as well. So there's an awful lot of scope for flexibility there with integrations. So many of them, the customization is there because everyone's needs is different. So the way that you want to integrate with Salesforce may be different from the person next to you wanting to integrate with Salesforce. So that flexibility is there to allow you to kind of fiddle around with it and do what you want to in the way that is right for you and what you're aiming to get.
You mentioned that some products rely on or even require SharePoint, and some products can rely on Google Suite, the Google offering for business. Michelle asks, have you come across any options that can integrate with both? For example, Microsoft 365, Microsoft Teams, Delve, as well as content repositories in Google Drive?
Yes, so there is, I think off the top of my head, Happio is the only product that relies on Google. Most of the rest of them will then work very well with the Microsoft suite of libraries, and then some of them work just as well with the Google suite. So you would be able to draw through libraries from both. So Interact is an example. Where you could draw through in a widget, for example, you could draw through a widget that displays both, whilst there are others that will actually bring through into a document library. What you tend to find though is that they are kept separate. So you couldn't have, say, a health and safety folder in SharePoint and a health and safety folder in Google and have them pull through into an intranet folder for health and safety. They would still be kind of their own separate sources of content, usually in the way that it's presented. But then there are some products like Koyo, where you could search for a document and it would show the content from whatever source it's coming from. So a lot of those will show in tabs, so you'd be able to specify saying, oh, I know it's in SharePoint or I know it's in Google, and then filter in that way. Or if you didn't know, then most of them will return results in all tab. So the user could then just search for health and safety and have everything brought through. So if you do have business units maybe having their own document sources stored in those spaces, you can, as a user, bring those back if you have the permissions, of course, to be able to see them. And one of the things I liked about Koyo, which I showed a little while ago, is if you don't know where something is and you need to update it, being able to search for it, find it and update it from within the search results page was something I really liked. I can see that being quite handy if you're a little bit stressed and can't remember where you saved something. Obviously, there's some governance issues there as well, which I won't go into. But from a technology side of things, I think that's quite helpful.
Okay, maybe our last question. If anyone has any further questions, please get them into the Q&A panel or even the chat panel now. Samantha asks, what do you think will be the next leading area of development of intranets? What's the next big thing?
So I think integrations is something that will continue. I think that they will get more interesting. So that kind of expansion on what I've already mentioned and seeing that side of things develop. There are some areas that I think that they should do. So accessibility is an area that is still not really covered wholly by all of the products we've seen. Some do it very well. So Invocha is very good. Interact has got a good feature for that as well, and others do it well. But that's an area that I think, given the big focus on diversity and inclusion at the moment, that's something that a lot of vendors could and should develop a little bit more. But then I think that just looking at how an intranet interacts with the broader digital workplace and how they can reach people, so the mobile technology is still, again, it's improved an awful lot and a lot of vendors do a very good job. But I think that's something that they could still think a little bit outside of the box and consider how they could give a slightly different approach for those people on mobile versus on desktop. And then apart from that, there are some really interesting things out there and some really interesting wildcard scenarios as to what the vendors are looking at and how they're exploring different tools and things that are needed across the clients that they already serve. And I'd like to see vendors really listening to their clients and actually developing tools based on that as much as trying to win new business. I think that's an area that I've spotted certainly over this last report. That's something I think more of them could do, because I think a lot of you now who have an existing platform and are really trying to make the best of it, you have the best feedback and the best suggestions for them to develop, or the best needs. So actually speaking about those needs to the vendors, I think will trigger those really interesting developments at the end of it.
Thank you there. Michelle asks, what are some of the best features you've seen for supporting employee connectivity when the majority of employees are off-site? So everyone's adapted in the last couple of years. Features are supporting that hybrid or work from home or work from anywhere.
Yeah, that sense of having to build community, I think, is still really important. So as much as there are social tools out there, so Yammer being the big social elephant in the room, I think there are features in intranets that provide alternatives. Sometimes Yammer maybe hasn't been rolled out very well and so gets a bit of a bad reputation. So having an alternative there is great. So discussion boards, so actually allowing people to post questions and just have conversations as well, having those informal spaces. So it's not all about kind of formal engagement and that kind of thing. It's actually allowing people just to relax and unwind and connect to people around them. So even we at ClearBox, we have our own little informal space where we share recipes and we talk about TV and we share silly things, just to relax and unwind, the sort of thing that you would do in an office when you would turn and speak to someone. That's now not possible because we're remote working. But beyond that connectivity again, so actually reaching people where they are, integrating with digital signage, so actually reaching people in reception areas or canteen areas. Whilst there's some debate about whether that's effective, certainly for some things it can't hurt and will reinforce certain messages, especially if it's done with care. rather than invading people's spaces, and also the mobile solution for those people that maybe are actually physically mobile, so those people who travel around a lot or who aren't based at desks even when working remotely. But there are a lot of social features that offer a variety of different solutions again, so it depends on what it is you need. But those discussion boards, the chats, the reactions, having dedicated spaces that are purely designed for those kind of conversations, or even a more kind of two-way approach to projects as well, something that Microsoft Teams kind of does with the channels and the chats that you can do through that, but actually allowing those kind of more informal spaces maybe to happen elsewhere. So Microsoft Teams can be quite a sensible professional place, and then you could have like a dedicated space that allows for those kind of posts and timelines and sharing polls and gamification and those sorts of things that can really encourage people that it's fine to spend time on the intranet in the right ways, and actually reward them for doing those things and for helping the community on the internet build that digital company space.
Alrighty, well that's just about the close of our webinar. So I'll thank everyone for participating. Thanks ever so much for our questions, and thank you, Suzie. It was great to see you today as well.
Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. And if you do have any other questions, either send them over to me on LinkedIn or reply to Wedge's email. I'm sure we'll come back to you.